Awesome. Welcome everybody to the final Marketo Engage Champion Office Hours of the year. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Amy Goldfein. I'm the head of marketing operations at Iterable. My pronouns are she, her. I will be your office hours admin. So if you need anything today, please feel free to send me a message in the chat. I'll also be posting some resources as we go, trying to keep things going in the chat and keep an eye on that for you as well. So we'll go through some quick introductions. We'll talk about some house rules and some housekeeping, discuss any upcoming Adobe opportunities, and then kick it off with our panel. So our house rules are that in order to keep everything user-focused and a safe space for members, we ask that you have no self-promotion or pitching, don't contact people outside of the user group without their consent, and if people share their use cases, please don't share that information without their consent. This meeting will be recorded. It will be posted at mugs.marketo.com. The same page where you registered conveniently turns into a recording page. So I will post the recording along with slides, and the slides will include a list of the questions and any resources that were shared. So you have those if you want to follow up afterwards. Just wanted to make sure you all know on the Mugs page, I want to make sure that you've actually joined our chapter. There's a way you can register for any Mug meeting without actually joining the chapter, but if you don't join the chapter, you don't get follow-up, or you don't get emails inviting you to further meetings. So, please make sure you go to this page. I'll post a link to it in just a minute, and click join us so that in the new year you get invites to all our new office hours. Just wanted to let y'all know that if you need to update your Marketo Engage certification, whether you are getting newly certified or you want to get certified for the first time, through the end of this year, which is not too much longer, there are still 2 exams. The old exam that was just ported from Marketo Certified Expert is still available. And then there's also a new exam that was designed in collaboration with a bunch of Marketo champions. And that is the new exam. And then starting in the new year, that will be the only exam. And so I will post a link to this page if you want to check it out and see which one you want to register for. Getting certified is really great. We're all certified is the first step to becoming a champion. So it's a great step for your career and in your advocacy. Okay. We're going to go through some quick introductions, starting with our moderator, Chiara.
Sounds good. Hi, I am Chiara Riga. I am the marketing operations manager at Digital Shadows. We're a small cybersecurity company. My pronouns are she, her. I am a 2-time Marketo champ, and I'm super excited to be moderating this today. So I'll kick it to Max.
Hey y'all, I'm Max Maurier. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing Ops, Growth, and Analytics at Druva. My preferred pronouns are he, him. Love this group of people. I'm a 1-time Marketo champ, a longtime community member, and really excited to hear what everyone else on this call has to say.
Chris, what do you next?
Hey everybody, my name is Chris Saporito. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm the marketing technology manager at Paycor. I've been using Marketo about 6.5 years now, and a couple of features or functionality that I'm pretty familiar with or pretty heavily involved with would be like nurtures and Marketo Sales Insight, or just working with our sales team to make sure we have a fluid way to pass back and forth leads.
Awesome. And I'll kick it to Jenn.
Hi, my name is Jenn Keeler, formerly DiMaria. Just got married. I've been a champion since 2016, so I think everyone here is kind of sick of seeing me stick around, but hopefully I'll have some good insights for you today. I am a marketing operations manager here at Telium, and my pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. And last but not least, we have JD.
Hey there, JD Nelson. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing Operations at Vimeo. My pronouns are he, him. I am I don't even know, 4-time or 5-time Marketo champion. I've literally forgotten. So I'll just say I'm one less than Jen. How about that?
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to jump into the questions here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well. But the ones we'll at least start off with are the ones that you guys submitted ahead of time. So the first one I'm going to start with is, what reports do you think are the most important to keep data clean in your instance? And how do you approach, oh no, let's start with just the one. So I think Jen wanted to start with that one.
Yeah, so what we actually do is every week on my calendar, I set aside 2 hours every Wednesday to just go through and check on my exceptions dashboard. And then I review it with my team to see, like, is there anything we need to do with this? And usually what happens is the most popular reports end up being bad sources. Like if we have bad sources coming in, where did they come from? Is sales manually changing them? Because that happens and that's always fun. Maybe we have like a bad API connector, something like that. Or maybe people aren't getting sources at all. That one tends to be a big one. Another one is something like people with no acquisition program. That's always an issue because what will happen is, if they don't have an acquisition program, I don't know if you can hear my dogs, but they're really excited about this topic. If people come in with no acquisition program and they, engage with another program, they could get attributed to that program. So that's always a good report to run, or people who don't have those. Incomplete email addresses, there's no @ symbol, there are special characters that you don't typically see. Hard bounce emails, bounce reasons, all of that is kind of the type of reports that I look at to make sure our data is clean.
Awesome. And then I'll kick this one to Jen or anyone else if you want to chime in as well. How do you guys approach removing leads that aren't engaged anymore?
I go back and forth on whether or not I like to remove records who aren't engaged. I know that we all kind of get caught up in the Marketo tiers and the money aspect of it, but I also am afraid to remove data sometimes. So, but if I'm looking to remove leads, if I actually need to do that or suppress people to, improve my bounce rates or something like that, I'll look at, who's hard bouncing, like who doesn't have contact information. We can't get a hold of them anymore. Maybe they moved companies and we lost sight of them, things like that. So.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. We were seeing some pretty low delivery rates a few years back, and work with Marketo Consulting on like just deliverability. So we didn't really have too many good practices in place to really just keep our database clean. And so we started putting some lists together of just people who aren't engaging. Like we're sending them multiple emails, they're not opening, they're not clicking, they're not visiting our website, basically not showing a pulse at all. So we came up with a process to start removing those after, I think, 3 months of inactivity. But what we also did with that too is we set up a process in Salesforce so that way we would kind of uncheck that box that allows them to sync back and forth between the two. But if that person were to go to our website and fill out another form, basically we had a process in place that would allow them to then stay in Marketo and flow back and forth between the two. So one piece is just like remove people who aren't engaging, but also give them the opportunity to get back into the system. So again, you can nurture them from that point on.
Awesome.
Don't gloss over that checkbox though. That don't sync to Marketo checkbox in Salesforce for those people using it. Like that, I learned that a couple years ago, and I was like, wait, what? Like if you just check a box in Salesforce, you have it not synced to Marketo, and it keeps all those people in Salesforce because the data records in Salesforce, like the size limits are not like what they are right on Marketo, and so it's so much easier to keep like a small subset of people you're using over here and not using over there, and manage that checkbox for you is a big way to do it. But for me, it's like every time I send an email, I suppress out a certain group of people. At some point, you have to look, why do I have this group of people in my database, right? So if you see those trends, like you're just always doing the same thing, like get rid of those people. You don't really need them.
I would add though, from like an analytics and like data measurement perspective, get familiar with how your company attributes down the line, because for companies that use like lead source as their center point for modeling, whether it's a good or a bad thing, you will then lose whatever that source is when you delete that record, which may be a good thing, right? We've got, in our system leads that are 8 years old, and we have an agreement with the teams involved about when it's appropriate to delete those, understand that it's going to affect attribution, further on down the funnel. Those leads may come back in with a completely different source, and that's okay. But being familiar with kind of the downstream effects is also important when you're, deciding to delete, not necessarily just purely based on engagement.
That's a very good call. Okay, let's move on to another one. I am going to kick this one to Max. If you are responsible for the use of the Marketo automation tools, would you recommend access to other systems that it integrates with, such as Salesforce, or do you think it's enough to know only the Marketo side?
I am curious what other folks' perspective is on this, but personally, I think that understanding your CRM is critical, and depending on where you want to go career-wise, the more you can learn about the other systems that play off the data that we create in marketing ops, it's really helpful to understand how what we do impacts sales and finance teams. So the more you can speak to that and understand, how that data translates into your CRM and potentially BI platforms or systems of record, the better equipped you're going to be to have conversations with executives and VPs and folks about marketing's impact, and make sure that you're not, like we just talked about on the last topic, making sure that what we do in Marketo around database cleanliness or about data management doesn't necessarily have like the incorrect impact further down the funnel or further down the system stack. So I think it's important, depending on how, where you're at in your career and how you plan to progress or where you want to develop.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
I'll also say, just to piggyback on myself there, like at a bare minimum, understand like the objects you're working with in your CRM. Like we in Marketo operate on the person records in terms of what we can actually like write to most of the time. But we know we have got read access to a lot of stuff in our CRM. Get familiar with just how those objects interplay. I've run into a lot of people that aren't totally clear on the difference between leads and contacts, or the difference between account data and opportunity data and how we can use that stuff. And that can be not just helpful, in other systems, but really helpful for us to understand what we can automate and, how we can build, nurtures or automated programs around certain other elements of the, of the CRM that are also really important, not purely the person record.
Great. The next question, in your experience, how should companies with multiple verticals approach lead scoring? Do you weigh it by vertical or build individual models based on each audience niche, or how do you kind of handle that? JD, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. First of all, it's the good identification, right? Is to know that you're actually needing to do this based on vertical. And I think what people don't realize a lot of times is that like lead scoring and these fields are like baselines, right? So I think everyone starts with like a scoring field, and then you learn, I can duplicate that scoring field to track something else. And you're like, I can duplicate that to track something else. And then you can say, okay, every time I do one thing, I can do another. And so it kind of becomes this bigger scale of a project. And I think if you're looking at, behavior and demographic are like normal scoring, but the same methodology that you use to say visits web page as a behavior plus score could also impact your vertical, right? So if there's a signal that you wanted to identify, it's the same methodology as your behavior score. And what you see is that you start to get these clonable groups of assets that you can easily just flip over from one vertical to another just by changing a token name. And so and so it's easy. It's a great idea, and it needs to be thought out, but it needs to be built to scale ultimately. But I think everyone should have it. You start small, right? You start with your normal scoring. You get into demographic, behavior, all that kind of scoring. And then you start getting into verticals, and you start getting into what sales wants to see, and you start needing to know how these things rank, and one thing starts to become hotter, right? And it's like any other scoring program that you might run, where you have to revisit it quarterly or monthly, depending on targets and changes in your business. But it's you'll reap the benefits for it for sure.
Totally. I totally agree with that, JD. All right, next question. Chris, do you have any nurture program best practices?
Yeah, so I think that the thing to think about with nurtures, especially if you're just starting out, is to start small, like JD was saying. Like, you can always build off of it. So, for our example, when I started at Paycor, we'd done a little nurturing, mainly just kind of one-off type campaigns, but we started with one nurture, prospect nurture, and then we just started building onto it. We started adding dynamic content and then changing some different streams throughout that nurture to speak to the people, whether it be different industries, employee bands, really to speak to who they are, and then built off of that. So once we had that one launched, we started to add on additional nurtures that we just kind of like used to complement the other ones. So different verticals or different channels that we wanted to speak to. So I think, again, just with a best practice of starting small, do what you can, and then you can always build off of it. So, start with some good bones, and then really just build off of it to make it unique, make it more personalized for the audience that you have.
Love it. This next question we got in the chat is kind of piggybacking off of that. So in the chat, we had a question. We have multiple products, 10 or more. We'd like to uncover opportunities from non-sales ready leads. Do you have any recommendations on best way to set up our nurture programs? Jen, I know you are big in nurture programs and know a lot about them. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, no pressure. Thanks for the setup. So there are a couple ways that you can go about it, but the way that I've seen it done most successfully is to have a single product nurture with a stream in that nurture per product. If you don't know already what type of products these people are interested in, then maybe your first stream is like a generic sort of welcome stream, like here's more info about us, here are the type of products that we offer. And then based on their engagement in those emails, then maybe you can set up some type of product scoring that once they hit a certain score for, like, I don't know, unicorn balloons, and they move to the unicorn balloon stream, or the dog pillows, and they move to the dog pillow streams. That's how I've done it in the past relatively successfully. But if anyone else has other ideas, definitely open to hearing them.
I think just to chime in, a lot of like we have two very distinct products in the past, and then we saw them start to kind of blend together in some of the use cases, and we had some conflicting people, and they kept coming back and forth, and a lot of times when you get somebody coming into your website, they don't know what they want. Let's be honest, right? And they're kind of just filling in forms, giving you data of what they think they need, and you kind of know better. And so to bubble this down to how do you manage it on a nurture basis, what I've found is that an ideal way to manage nurture programs, if you have one per product, because I had distinct nurture programs, one per product, and the idea was they come in with product A, but then we eventually determined that they want product B, and we needed a unified way to like pause one and keep the other one and manage that membership. And segmentation was kind of like a global segmentation for kind of your nurture sourcing. We found was ideal. So so you set up a segmentation, everyone has to be in one of the options, and if they fill out a form, you put them into one segmentation, and by taking them out of that, it automatically pauses the other nurture program. And so you can have a cascading set of engagement programs all running independently with all of their streams and everything like that, but the holistic membership of that program is dependent on what they did and how that impacts the segmentation. And then you just use that segmentation field in the pause or normal status, cadence stage for each nurture. Because otherwise you're like, how many nurtures, right? And if you can't have just one nurture, because I've had one nurture where it had like, 15, 20 streams. And like, if I need to do another nurture, like, oh, let's add another 5 streams, it gets, I worry that it's not working right. So I'm like, I just want to have a second stream just for like reporting and like my own edification of like being a smaller subset. So we like to use the segmentation field to manage which one they're actually getting casts out of.
Yeah, I think to add on to that too is like, it's really important, at least for us, we tag all of our content. So when people register for specific webinars or download specific content, we kind of relate that to a product or a product interest. And then you can use that to, again, speak to the prospect or the client or the partner really based on who they are and what they're engaging with. So again, the more complex you get or the more you build onto your nurture, you can really do some cool things. But again, you got to kind of put some processes in place to be able to speak to them with what they're interested in.
Kind of get dovetails into, this might be the same question, was the previous one on verticals, right? Is how do you score these things? And sometimes the score, like if you interact with one product more often than you are the other one, that score can then dictate to the segmentation on which nurture program or engagement program they should be receiving, and you can start to build the two things together and go based off, you could assume that what they come in with the first time is what they want to know about, and then you can look at what they're interacting with, their scores, and the other products will change, other verticals, right? That might lead them to another engagement program, and then you just have one segmentation to rule them all in essence, right? Small steps. Oh my gosh, yes. Don't build it all at once.
That's a big thing. I feel like everyone tries to do everything at once at the same time from the start, and then it just never kicks off. Like you have to just go with the minimum viable product and build from there.
Totally agree. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about enrichment tools. So somebody asked, what is the best automated enrichment tool to update lead email addresses when they change companies? We have some leads that come back with bounce codes. From a manual search, it appears that they have switched companies. Max, did you have ideas on this?
Sure. I mean, generally, no enrichment tools, perfect. I prefer, whenever possible, to have a combination of enrichment platforms to do things like this, as well as enrichment generally. I think the two that we see most often are Clearbit and ZoomInfo, and those provide that functionality to a certain extent, where you can ping them anytime you hit a certain point in your life cycle or whatever, and it will send you back whether they're still at the company. It can potentially identify a new record. The tool that I've seen best handle this from like a new record creation standpoint, though, is one that I don't know if people have run into, called User Gems, which is one we're exploring right now, and one that I've used in the past, that essentially its whole job is to do that, where it identifies when, specifically your customers, not everyone in your database, but your customers move companies, and then give you that new info. It's a great lead gen tactic, for a new business. But that's the only one that I've seen that personally that I've run into that's specifically designed to identify that. And most other enrichment tools have that capability, but it's not kind of their core functionality, and it's not going to be perfect. And that's why I kind of prefer a combination of options.
Totally agree. Has anyone else seen another tool they've used? I haven't.
I second the orchestration part, right? And I think there are some companies out there that are cracking that code on how to pair a lot of these different vendors together and determine on the fly what dictates one versus the other, right? We use that model, and we have a vendor that we use to orchestrate that. And step one is to validate the email, and the vendor that they go through is Bright Verify, right? And that's just like domain good, right? Sender address, like, does it at least pass? And if it doesn't pass, right, then you can say, okay, let's try and look at why. Let's look at an enrichment vendor that looks at LinkedIn profiles, and they can pull in, oh, it looks like this person's over there now. And then there's like tools like that that can do that. I don't know if I have an example of like the best one to use. We kind of use we just run through until we find an address that ultimately works. But I do, yeah, I prefer to go to a vendor that goes to vendors, and you can move budget around and move, processes and scale, and you're not committed to one contract with one vendor and stuff like that. Just for that reason, like at some point, the world changes, the industry changes, your business changes, and what used to be a good enrichment tool for you isn't anymore, and you're stuck in a contract till the end, whereas some places you can just move that money to a different vendor, and it's all on the fly. Sorry, I tangented into enrichment rather than validation.
No, that's no problem.
It's all connected.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Chris, someone is asking, what are your recommendations? And everyone can jump in after, obviously. What are your recommendations for learning from others that might be a little bit more experienced in Marketo? I mean, obviously we're here at office hours, but when office hours aren't running, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, so this is one that I kind of love to talk about and kind of use my experience to share with others. But I mean, so when I came on to Paycor, coming up on 7 years ago, I'd been using HubSpot previously. I was a product manager on our marketing team, so I wasn't really doing full-time automation, but had this opportunity to come and basically run our automation at Paycor. So quickly learned through interviewing for that position, or this position, I guess, just exploring like how to learn Marketo, like what's it all about, like what resources are out there to be able to ultimately become an expert on it. And so I think between programs like this, the champion program, the user groups, but ultimately just the community is great to be able to like search for things you have questions on, obstacles that you're trying to overcome, new initiatives that you've got to kind of come up with a project for, really just to learn what's out there. And there's so many people that are just like great about giving you their time, answering questions, like hopping on a Zoom call to help you figure out, what you're having trouble with. Another champion, Michael Tucker, I think might still be on here. I was having some trouble creating a webhook, not even a month ago, for a new project that we're working on. He hopped on a Zoom call with me, walked me through it, helped me figure out how to actually make that happen. And I feel like most of the people in the Marketo community are willing to do that, which has been awesome. So I went from not knowing Marketo at all, just through using other users, the community itself, to ultimately, becoming a champion a few years later. So I just think there's so many good resources out there, and people who are really willing to give you their time and attention to get you to where you need to be. So again, for me personally, it's been awesome to go from no experience to being a champion and kind of leading this charge for our company. But there truly are so many resources for you to get the knowledge and the education and the training that you need, all for free, which is awesome.
Amazing. Anyone else have any recommendations?
There's a lot of Slack communities out there too. I don't know if you touched on that, Chris. Like there are a couple. I don't necessarily want to give them free promotion. You can find them on LinkedIn, but there are multiple marketing ops specific Slack communities that are cross-platform that include Marketo. So the Marketo community is a great resource where it's all Marketo specific, but there are also other platforms out there where there's a lot of healthy discussion. I totally echo the point that people are very willing to help and respond. I think we're so used to hearing from salespeople every day that when we actually get someone who wants to talk to us about what we do and, you know, rely on us for help, that we're more than willing to hop on like a 30-minute call or something. So yeah.
Totally.
Especially when Summit comes back too, like to connect and see people and just network with the people that you're bouncing ideas off of, like even just learning from other people in their community post of what they're having trouble with. Like that's how I learn of new things that we should be doing or new things that we should be thinking about doing. And then you get to meet those people in person and just kind of like talk to them. It's really awesome. I'm definitely looking forward to getting those back in person as well.
Totally. And user groups as well are a great way to meet people, either in person or virtually. But I totally agree. Like every kind of cool new thing I've learned about has been like an iteration on something I learned at Summit or a user group or from a fellow champ. So that's echo what everyone's saying here. Did anyone else have anything to add before I move to the next one? All right. JD, how often should we be cleaning our database?
All the time. No, yeah, this is an interesting one, I think. I thought I'd put some notes somewhere. It's so hit or miss. So many people don't clean their database, first of all. So rough, right? But I think the best thing to do is to keep consistent with the data you're collecting, and that, like, getting back to the enrichment thing, right? Everything comes full circle to this. You know, the data you gather, the enrichment you gather, everything you gather, if it times out, you know, get rid of it. If it bounces, get rid of it. If it's clogging up your system, get rid of it. But like from a consistent basis, right? Like quarterly, hopefully, like would be my like best practice, ideal one. You know, start of the quarter, you go through it, and you can set it up in time with like your sales ops team reassigning leads, because they reorg the sales group, right? And they change a lot of sales ownerships at that point, and you can get in on that bandwagon and clean out all the stuff that ultimately doesn't get updated, and you can look at these things. So we have in our instance, we have like a folder literally called cleanup, and it has one program that we clone every quarter. And in that clone, there's a smart list for each of the things that you can identify, and then you can just repeat, you know, and keep going from there. So a lot of those things that we've kind of talked about earlier, the bounce lists, the email addresses, the missing acquisition programs should all just be cleaned out. I try to do it quarterly. If you can do it more often, kudos to you. But it comes down to what you're cleaning too, right? Like there are things you should clean out every day, right? And there's things you should clean out every week, and there's things you should clean out when you can, and when you can to me is quarterly.
Totally.
You should also check with there's a couple teams that you're going to want involved. Like if your org's large enough to have like a compliance team, there may even be like compliance timelines that are actually mandatory at your org for cleaning out your database. So like ours, you know, we can't retain, and I think, yeah, GDPR related, Chiara, I think that's your domain, I'll defer to you. But the, you know, 2 or 3 year retention, we have a set rule there. So, you know, if there is no legitimate business case or a recent activity, then we have to delete. And then sales ops is also like crucial. We are always really hesitant to delete contacts because we have to get sales ops involved in that, where they don't need to really be involved as much in the lead stuff. So it's maybe a lot easier to start with lead deletion than overall database cleanup, but make sure, again, understanding the objects you're working with in Salesforce and the teams that rely on those will help you set some like ongoing deletion parameters where you don't need to go get that approval every time. You know, but make sure you know who you're going to impact and who potentially has a stake in that. Sales ops and legal compliance teams are usually teams you want to chat with as well.
Yeah, if you're purging a ton of records, don't be doing it at end of quarter. Things like that are really good to keep in mind, because we've all made mistakes and they're a lot harder to fix when you're trying to like close the quarter strong.
All right, hot take. Can I jump in with a question
Yeah,
for the
of
group?
course.
All right, panel. All right, Salesforce record is deleted, right? Lead or contact. Do you automatically delete in Marketo or no?
We do.
I do.
I don't let my sales ops team delete records.
Right. Okay.
There's
Oh,
also
They
the
have to
that.
they have to
Yeah.
go through us,
Yeah.
which is a
okay.
real weird power imbalance that they hate. But yeah, I basically tell them that I kind of lie to them and tell them that if they do that, we can't delete the record in Marketo, even though we could. That way they have to go through us, and that way sales reps, can't like manipulate data on the Salesforce side. So that's how we handle that.
How do you handle that, JD?
I'm internal debate, and you guys split 50-50, so that was no help.
Sorry.
I lean on the I don't trust anyone but myself to do it, and I'm afraid of what data they're going to lose. And then we look at the data and we're like, I don't want any of this data, like just delete it. So I'm like, I'm torn because I don't want to delete it like just on a whim, but I'm also torn in that everything I've seen is just junk data that I should not have to worry about deleting. So it's, I was hoping for a little bit more of a split here, guys.
I mean, for us, we have our data, like our permissions really locked down. So the only people who can delete stuff is me and the two others on our RevOps team. And since we all report into the same team and we're really aligned, I feel comfortable just having that turned on, because if they're deleting something, it's for a reason. I think if it were more of a free-for-all where anyone could delete it, I would not have that turned on.
There you go. I'll take that.
All right. So this is a Jenn question, but I'm going to lob it to everyone after her because I would love to hear all of your answers. What would be the one thing that you say is the best feature in Marketo and why?
So this is something that I've actually had to think about a lot, because as a former consultant, people were always reevaluating their Marketo instances, seeing what else was out there. And I always had to, compare Marketo to other products, right? And there were a lot of good features, but the one that I always kept coming back to were the ability to use local tokens. So you can use those to write data that's program specific to other fields. You can, right now I'm actually using it as part of our scoring to write the scoring campaign name to a score change reason field. So we can capture the MQL reason when they pass their MQL threshold. So that's really useful. Like, it's minimal work to get a lot of data. So I would say mine were the local tokens.
All right. Let's go to Chris. What's your favorite feature and why?
I'm going to give you a general one. I think that Marketo's ease of use with like plugging and playing with other technologies is awesome. Again, for me, like when I started at Paycor, it was like me by myself, and we would have all these marketing technologies that we wanted to integrate. It was just kind of figuring it out, but like it was easy enough for me to not have, I don't have a real technical background experience or coding or anything like that, or API. So like the plug and play ability of Marketo and its partners makes it super easy for someone who really doesn't understand the technical aspects of getting those to like work together. And for me, it was great just to be able to kind of do that stuff on my own. And again, learn from it, but also just to be able to get it put together, make sure it works, and kind of QA it was just super easy for me as I've kind of come along this journey and learn more from it. But I mean, we've got more technologies than I can count integrated with Marketo, and most of which are really easy to actually get up and running.
Totally agree. Max, what about you?
I was hoping you would forget I'm here, because I can't think of I can't think of one thing. I mean, data management, again, I don't think it's necessarily Marketo specific, but everyone obviously works really closely with sales ops teams. It's so much easier for us to manage our data. I mean, quicker, I'd say, like if it comes down to, hey, we need to do some sort of batch update for XYZ, we're going into a new fiscal year or something. My team can update the million records in our database, one particular data point, in a matter of hours, as opposed to waiting around for sales ops to do that, over the course of several weeks. I love the tokens option and the integration option. I'm trying to find something else to talk about, but just data management on the whole, it's not perfect, but it's pretty efficient.
You're all good. I sneak attacked you with that one, so no worries. JD, what about you?
There's one that I think just came out in one of the recent releases that I haven't had the opportunity to use, but I was excited to see, and it gets into kind of what Jenn was talking about with the tokens. But on the executable campaigns, it's like passing tokens now into front. Is that what you were talking about, Jenn, or is this the next level deeper than that, right?
This was just like, so say and it's kind of the same thing with like the local assets too, right? Like you can write tokens for the local assets, but maybe there's some data that's program specific you want to stamp to a field like Let's Touch or something.
Yeah, but now with executable campaigns, you can pass that local token along with the campaign into a different program and like override the local tokens there, and do that. So I'm excited to like look into that and see about that kind of things, because it brings a pain point I've always had of, I want to send this same email with these different tokens to all these same people, and passing the data. I think there was cool, but my controversial maybe favorite feature, right, that's functionality we're talking about, email editor 2.0 templates is my favorite, which I don't know if it's widely accepted, but I love like the variables and modules and drag and drop functionality, and I've probably over engineered it and over hacked it to my own detriment, but just I have a campaign ops person on my team, and I'm just like, just drag this in, pop that in, and you're not going to break the code, I will. And so it just lets us scale so much faster.
That's an awesome one. All right. We got a question in the chat. We are looking to implement Salesforce as our CRM in the near future. And I was wondering, what are some pitfalls we should watch out for when integrating Salesforce in our existing instance?
Yeah, so in my experience, there have been two things that might cause a few red flags, at the least a yellow flag, like when you're trying to think about what's going to happen to you. The first one is figure out how you're going to migrate the actual data, because so if you're switching to a new CRM and you're putting your old CRM's data into the new CRM, and then you connect Marketo to it, just be wary that might create a load of dupes. I'm not really sure how that would work, like if it would auto dedupe or something like that, but that's just something to be wary of. A lot of times in the past, what we've done is taken the previous CRM's data, put it in Marketo, then connected Salesforce, and then synced it back down. So that might be something to consider. It doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but it might save you some headaches. And then the other thing are your fields. So depending what the fields looked like in your previous CRM versus what the fields look like in your new one, and how Marketo wants to read those, you might end up with some duplicate fields or some weird mappings that you're going to have to work with support on as well. So those are two things that I would look out for.
You do your due diligence to clean those fields out first.
Yeah.
Don't import a bunch of junk and then realize you want to clean a bunch of junk. Like, do it first before you put that field in there. If you don't need that field, don't bring that field.
Yeah, no.
Scrap it.
This question that just came through the chat, I think, is a great one for Chris. I know you talked about MSI earlier. Someone says, I am having some difficulties getting my Salesforce team to commit time to updating to the latest version of MSI. Since the last time they updated, it caused some issues with existing functionality. Are there any persuasive tips you can offer about the latest release to get them excited about the efficiencies for the sales team?
Yeah, I think, again, I think there's some documents out there that'll show you, all the pros to migrating to that. For us, like we had been using the MSI for as long as we've had Marketo and Salesforce, I think. And to be honest, it really didn't have too big of a facelift or anything like that since it rolled out. So even just the new look and feel was a lot to get our sales team kind of excited about it. But we do a pretty good job of teaming with our sales ops team, our marketing team, and our sales team to kind of, promote these things before we actually roll it out. But yeah, I would just go through the documentation, pull out like the new look and feel, the new functionality to it, and kind of put together a little document, or even, review it in a meeting or something like that to just review all the pros to it. For us, anytime we roll something out like this, we go through our sandbox first to make sure it works and all that stuff. So I don't think for us it was too big of a lift, but yeah, I think you just kind of hammer home all of the pros to upgrading it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have not yet upgraded because we are having the same issue. So
Right.
I think that's
Same.
great, Chris. Yeah, so you're not alone in that one. Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more. This one is a really interesting question. How has Apple's new mail privacy protection affected your process reporting and or instance? This is regarding all emails opened by Apple's email client showing as opened, as well as their hide my email aliases. Jen, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, we actually, on the last office hours that I was on, we had a good chat about this. And ultimately, what it ends up coming down to is changing the way that people think about things. Like, a lot of times opens and clicks are vanity metrics anyway, and they don't necessarily tell you what you can do as a marketer to take action on something that would help improve engagement in a lot of ways. And then especially with like bots too, like we have bots clicking all over the place in our emails, and like, so we have to go into all these records to be like, did they really MQL? But they clicked like 400 links, and no human being does that. So it's causing a lot of headaches. So what we're doing is we're kind of trying to shift our mentality to, well, what can we consider an actual conversion? Like, are they going somewhere and filling out a form? Are they going to our website and doing XYZ activities? And being more mindful about what the follow-up action is that might be more related to like the buyer journey and intent actions than just maybe someone fat fingered a link in the email or something, you know what I mean? So something that's more meaningful.
Awesome. Has anyone else been doing anything different since this rolled out?
I haven't noticed it. I'm gonna be honest. Like I didn't see a dip or a change or anything. I'd 100% go with Jen on moving away from that. Like we track one thing per, like I don't care how many links you're gonna click, like how many opens, and like I don't track a click in Marketo. I track a visit to a page and then attribute it back as a click, like as in the program status. Like your clicks don't, hit or miss. But if they visit the page, I'll assume your click, and then we'll track the rest later. But yeah, it's kind of weird because you have to convey that to the people building the programs, like, or the campaigns, that you have what, how do I track clicks? Oh, visits page. But did they click? I don't care, right? They visited the page, that's a click. It doesn't, it's like right brain, left brain, I think, to some people, or just like like you have to think about it for a while before it clicks, and then you're like, okay, yeah, that makes more sense, because then you could say if they visited the page, I don't care if they clicked the link or not. Like sometimes the click metric isn't even there. Like you can err on the side of not getting the click as well. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm the same way, and I haven't noticed any issues because of that. So cool. I think we have time for one more. I really like this one. What are the biggest mistakes that you see people making in Marketo? JD, I'll give this one to you.
Yeah, we get these conversations all the time, right? Like everyone wants to know what the deal is. But I think for me, it's always been, I think I built my own instance in the past, and I learned a lot doing it. And then I came here and I kind of started to rebuild, and I saw how other people did it. And I think sometimes you get the experience of seeing people's style reflected in their work. And one of the biggest benefits I've seen since I've been here was one solid lead lifecycle flow. And every into your database, the first create step should only be used in one place, and not like if lead created, then check for 9 things. Because I actually have, and I've been meaning to do it, maybe I'll do it now. I have like 4 programs from like 2016 or something that have a lead is created, and the first step of the flow is, did they fill out the form or not? And then it says, okay, then I'm going to remove them from the campaign. And so every net new lead that comes in my system has these 4 steps on it, and none of them are even active anymore. And it's like, what a waste, right? So like streamlining that one lead is created flow to do the things you need it to do before you sync to Salesforce or your CRM is by far my biggest thing that people do wrong. But I think, you know, there's a lot of them, right? Like when you're setting up the Salesforce sync and you don't block some fields, and you just like say any field in Salesforce goes to Marketo, like that's a huge mistake. Don't do that. What else? Other ones? Who's got some more? The list can go on and on.
Mine's more theoretical though. In my opinion, a lot of people try to use Marketo to do all the things, and Marketo is really good at doing so many different things, but at some point your company or you as a person will even grow out of all the things that Marketo can do, and you might need to investigate an additional platform. So for example, Visible for attribution or lifecycle or something like that versus just using Marketo. And Jess Cow, who is a fellow champion and also a great mentor, she always kind of uses the analogy of like, you're using Marketo as a hammer to do like all the things. Like you can't build a house with just a hammer, you need other tools sometimes. So I think from like a strategic, theoretical place, like you need to, even though you can do a lot with Marketo, you shouldn't be trying to make it do everything. It's the same thing with Salesforce too. Like just because you can do something in there doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And you might get some janky stuff going on. So you know, that's my beef for the day.
Love it. Max or Chris, do you have anything to add on here before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, on that topic, again, straying from Marketo, the platform, I think, I mean, our time is kind of our, you know, I mean, cliche, but our greatest resources. And as marketing ops, we're dealing with so many teams and so many requests, so many things we need to execute. Easier said than done, but making sure that you are working on things that actually matter, I think is something I see a lot of people miss on, where they're purely executing because someone told them to do it and not thinking through whether that's something that's actually necessary. You know, like for example, we have a lot of legacy nurture programs, and our demand gen teams like us to update those nurture programs, but they're not contributing to our success as a marketing org. So I just said, I'm not going to do any more nurture updates until I see a plan for how your strategy is going to get us to here, and just completely stop. And that's not the best thing to do, but I'm also not going to waste our time executing that when there are other things that actually help. And so again, it's a little difficult to actually get to that place, but making sure that you're not spinning cycles on, you know, things that your marketing stakeholders think help but don't actually help is one of the things that, you know, I see a lot of folks, you know, dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah, real quick, I know we're coming up on time. I think I'd recommend just keeping track of all the things that you do. Keep notes of projects that you've worked on, campaigns that you've launched. Like, again, for personal professional development, keeping track of all the cool things that you're doing is super important for advancement in your current company, future companies, but also you know, asking for additional resources, headcount, new tools, technology. Like keeping track of all this stuff is an easy way for you to make the case for again, growth personally, professionally, or additional headcount, additional resources, etc. But just keep track of all the cool stuff that you're doing.
Totally agree. All right, we're basically at the hour, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much to everyone who joined and who's watching this on demand. We will get you the recording and the slides whenever they're available. And have a wonderful holiday season. The office hours will be back in 2022, excuse me.
Oh.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, panelists, for doing a great job. Thank you, Chiara, for hosting. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Phil.
See you guys.